Welcome back to Wolf Financial Live. I am your host, Gav Blaxberg, CEO at Wolf Financial, here today with private art dealer and Love is Blind contestant, Leo Braudy, joining us. And we're going to be talking about art today, but as an investment. There's a lie out there that is being sold to the public, telling them that art is beating the S&P 500, and it is utter bullcrap. Some art, though, could be the greatest investment of your life. And we're going to tell you today what to not do, what to do. No financial advice given here, but it should be a very fun one. Leo, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gav, for having me. And yeah, we'll get right into it. So first, I'm going to be talking about art purely as a financial aspect. No art fluff, no art, purely like an asset. And I'm also going to do something that I don't normally do, which is I actually have some notes in front of me because I have some numbers and I want to make sure that I get my numbers right. So why is art not a great investment? Some of you may have heard that art beats the S&P 500. Have you ever heard that?
I have. I feel like, who is it, Masterworks or something? They like to throw up a little chart or graph to sell some.
Exactly. And where that's actually a really problematic statistic. So where that comes from is something called the Moses MEI Art Index, which looks at a sample of art from somewhere like 1958 to 2008. And if you look at it, it beats the S&P 500. The problem is that it has a major selection bias, which would take a lot more time to get into, but it basically only looks at the top performing art that sells for a lot of money. So it's like saying, did you know the art that sells for the most amount of money and has the highest returns beats the S&P 500? Doesn't sound as like great.
Yeah,
The other
less attractive.
issue, yes, exactly. And there's a lot of art out in the market. The other issue is that it doesn't factor in things like insurance. If you buy fine art, you got to insure it. That can be 2 to 3% of the value of the work per year. Also, it shows the price that the auction house sells it, and they have to take their cut. When you look at it all said and done, it ends up being a much riskier and less great investment. So probably weird that a dealer is telling you this, but it's true. But there are also wonderful ways to make money with art.
Yeah, I want to talk about kind of some of the do's and don'ts here. And I definitely want to just dive into finding art that can actually appreciate as an investment, right? Because this was a little bit of our conversation pre-pod, but we talked about how there's blue chips and penny stocks, and far too many
Mm-hmm.
people buy the penny stocks of art thinking that there is potential for them to become a blue chip, and that is just not possible here. But there are some, right, like in early days NVIDIA or something like that, where you can find an opportunity and actually invest in it and hold it for the long haul and make a lot of money. So break down to me, like, you're actually in this business. You have clients that are, I'm sure, coming to you often and saying, how do I find something that's going to appreciate in value? What am I looking for if I'm actually trying to invest and make money in the art world?
Sure. So you've probably heard that they say art is the last great unregulated market. Insider information is legal. That's all true. But what does that actually mean? Like what information is actually relevant that affects an artwork's value?
Yeah.
So this might be a dangerous analogy, but art is sort of like a highly sophisticated meme stock, as in it doesn't necessarily change, but the context, largely the social context around it, does. And different social contexts matter. So, for example, if an artist gets a museum show, that will increase the value of his work. The market, which has accepted certain indicators as value, will want to spend more money. So the top is like a solo show at the MoMA. And like many things, like solo show is better than a group show, kind of makes sense if you think about it. Certain museums are better than other museums, and also certain galleries are better than other galleries. Like there's many people have heard of a gallery called Gagosian. That's like the top art gallery in the world. There's a few others in that space. And then there's sort of like a subset of B galleries, C galleries. And insider information would be, being in the business, you kind of might know that something's going to happen before it happens. And there's a truism in the art world which says you don't make money from selling art, you make money from buying art. Because there was a golden age. My grandparents founded the business, and when they started, there wasn't online. So it was a lot. You could buy a work of art. No one had anything to compare it to. You could sell it for 10 times the price and someone would buy it and be happy. But now you can go online, you can look at auction results. So it's less about selling, it's more about finding value. So that's really that's how you find the next artist, is really studying those values.
Okay, so what you're telling me is art can be made more valuable if the artist is going to be placed into a specific museum, if they're going to be placed in a gallery, if they're going to do a certain show. Now, that's pretty difficult to know, right? Because by the time it gets announced, then probably all the people who had that inside information that it's going to happen have already pounced on that opportunity. So, do you think
Totally.
that for the everyday person who does not have that information, is there any way for them to get an edge? Is there any way for them to learn this? Do they just have to like delve into the research of what's going to be added?
So there are a few ways to do it. One is a lot of people work with a dealer or an advisor and they trust their eyes and ears on the ground. One is also self-research. And the third, which is a new emerging category, is actually social media. And the art world has a very different relationship to social media than other industries, because you can't like overtly advertise. So there's sort of there's a interplay. However, it's actually something that I'm doing behind the scenes, that I'm kind of really market making some artists. And I can't talk too much about it right now, but finding artists on Instagram that don't have a lot of followers and watching them grow and seeing if they're going to get in galleries is one way. So there's no single right answer, but a blend of all three.
Okay, I like that. So getting in galleries is very valuable. Getting into other areas. What else increases the value of these not so valuable maybe art pieces at the moment? Right, the market doesn't say that they're very valuable. Getting into galleries, getting into shows is very valuable. Are there any other metrics that we could add on to that?
Yeah, one other art world truism is that an artwork is valuable. It's as valuable as the painting it's hanging next to. And what that means is, if a very established collector, and there are like famous collectors, buys a work and that's known, that will increase the value of a work of art. That's called provenance.
Okay, very interesting. All right, so association almost right there.
It's kind of like if a celebrity owned a particular memorabilia, it's worth more because it's interesting and it's validated as important.
Got it. So we're talking about worth more, worth less. Let's go back to point zero. How does anyone even decide what anything's worth?
Well, a very glib answer would be supply and demand. When an artist is starting out, the different galleries that might sign them will increase their price, but it's called building the career of an artist. You can't increase the prices too fast, but you also have to increase them over time, because if you increase them too fast, you get a bubble. So a lot of it is, a lot of galleries, by the way, will do what Hermes does, which is where, Hermes, if you want to get a Birkin, you have to like buy Hermes products to then get access.
Wait 5 years.
Exactly. Artists will do similar things with artists to build careers.
Okay, interesting. But like, could you, as somebody who deals art, so for me, let's just make some comparison to the stock market here, right? I want to know, what is X stock worth? So let's take an example here of, we could do large cap, we could do small cap, but just going with something that everyone knows, Apple, right? How do we determine what Apple is worth? Well, obviously there's a public market that is going to decide what that value is, but how can I decide if that value is accurate? Well, I can look at, what are the revenues, right? What are the profits? What does the balance sheet look like? How much cash do they have on hand? Are they growing their revenues year over year, right? All these different pieces really factor into it. So is there anything like that, metrics, data, things that I can pull out when it comes to the art world that I could use as comparison?
Definitely not to the degree that with traditional financial assets. The closest that you have is auction results for what we call comps, which are comparables. So let's say you have a Picasso from his blue period, and it's 24 inches tall by 24 inches wide. And you may go from a particular period, you will try and find comparables that are as similar to that as possible. That's different, I know, than you're saying, which is actually finding metrics to evaluate. This is more like comparing kind of the end price, but that's about the best you have for really trying to estimate value.
Okay, got it. And then we kind of chatted about how you said art operates a bit like a meme stock, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that?
Well, as I understand meme stocks, I haven't ever dabbled in them myself, but more power to you if you have and you've made money off it. Is, as I understand it, it's not so much about the company. It's not about the stuff you just said, like revenues, balance sheets. It's about like social things, like we're all gonna pump up the value of this, or it might even be that so and so. There's like some famous meme stock people might be focusing on. You know what I mean? That is more like how art is valued. So in that way, I feel like it's more of a meme stock.
Okay, so are you saying that there could be like one artist and a bunch of other people start talking about them and they're like, I'm really into this, and they can almost pump the price?
If the relevant people are into the art, the like specific galleries and major collectors and museums, and you can't pump the price. Well, you can pump the price, but that will end up crashing the price. If you do it correctly, you'll slowly build an artist's price.
Okay, very interesting.
But it's like step functions. Like it doesn't go like this. It goes like here, and then there's a jump. Like you might start at $5,000 beginning of the career, jumps to 12,
Right.
25, 50, like that.
I want to talk a little bit, switch of the convo. I want to talk about something which often comes up that people hear or talk about when they think about art, because they see all these rich people, right? Billions of dollars, and they're just putting money into art, and they've watched some movies, right? And they've seen that art may be involved in the money laundering world. And I'm just curious, like from your perspective, having been in this industry for a long time, how does art play into that world? And not to say that we would ever do it, but if one was to use art to money launder, how would they do it?
So how would one launder money through art is what you're asking?
That is my question. And how do people do it right now?
Okay, so obvious disclaimer. Obviously, this is illegal. Obviously, this is not advice. If you knew actually how to do this, you probably would not be listening to a podcast about it.
But if you didn't, now's your chance. Tune in on the Wolf page.
Okay, now's your chance. So the first thing to note is that laundering money through art is much harder today than it used to be, because galleries and auction houses have much stricter KYC, know your customer, and AML, anti-money laundering rules, laws, and regulations. So the golden age of laundering money through art is over. However, I'm sure criminals still do it. And if they did, here is how you do it. So first step, get, I guess, $1 million through illegal means that you don't want to report. Next is there's a few ways to do it. One is you purchase a work of art on a private sale. However, the work that you purchase is in something called a Freeport. So there's something called the Geneva Freeport in Switzerland. It's a giant warehouse on the coast of Switzerland, and people store art there. In fact, there's some very fascinating mini documentaries on YouTube if any of you are interested in learning more. Some estimate that it has $1 trillion worth of art in the Swiss Freeport.
Jesus.
And the Swiss Freeport is interesting because although it's a warehouse, because it's attached to like a dock or a port, it's technically in transit, and you don't actually pay taxes until the transit has completed its destination. So the artwork is stored there, and very wealthy people will buy and sell art within the Freeport, but the art never moves. It stays in that warehouse, but it changes hands on paper, tax-free. Now, what you first have to do nowadays is you got to have like you got to do all these shell companies, because if someone knows that you purchased it. However, this is a way that you can buy a work of art. You don't even need to take hold of it. And then you sell the work of art. You never needed to hold of it. So that's one way. The next way that you would launder money, again, not advice, this is illegal, is that you would take your artwork to auction. Again, you have to do it anonymously. However, it's very normal for people to take works of art to auction anonymously, and for people to buy work at auction anonymously. Because, first of all, think about it. If you bought like a $10 million painting, you don't want people knowing your name. They can like look you up and you're a big target of theft. And selling it anonymously is also, people don't want to know, because you might be in like financial straits. Like people, you don't want people to know your moves.
Right. And
But
somebody you owe 5 million to, you don't want them to know that you just made 10.
exactly. So you could also take a work of art to auction. But what you would do is you would buy a work of art for set amount of money, let's $1 million. And then what you could do is you would have an unscrupulous, a corrupt appraiser over appraise the value. Now, back in the day, this was way easier. It's pretty much impossible now. First of all, if an appraiser gets caught, and it's really easy to get caught because there's all these comps that I told you online, they go to jail and they lose their license. Big deal. But back in the golden age, you get it over appraised. You can then take it to auction or private sale, stuff like that. So there's a lot of ways to skin the cat, but you first got to be able to be anonymous. That's the hardest part.
Are we talking, all right, since we're just going in the rabbit hole, what's the best way to be anonymous? Is it Cayman Islands, Swiss bank accounts? What do you think?
I don't know. But what I do know is that if you're an American, it's particularly difficult because we are very, we'll get the taxes from you. Doesn't matter where in the world you are.
Except Puerto Rico.
Oh, that's true. Touche on that. I know here in New York City, it's about the opposite. But I will say this, that I can't speak to the shell companies, but there's a few Freeports around the world where people will harbor art to avoid taxes. Right. The Geneva Freeport is sort of like the gold standard. Like if you bought a super expensive work of art for like over $10 million, you're most likely shipping it to Switzerland if you're trying to avoid taxes and, whatever.
Could this system be replicated of no taxes during transit with other types of goods? Like, is it just paintings there, or is anything there considered art? If I have a bunch of gold bars that I'm buying, I just stick them in there and then sell my gold to someone and have no taxes.
That's a great question. I only know about art, so I don't know how art does have. Here's the thing with art. Art has its own set of laws, and the set of laws for art are very different in America versus Europe. For example, Europe, you cannot take tax breaks for donating art to a museum. In America, you can. You also be able to used to do stuff called like fractional donations, and even the Nazi restitution cases are very different in America and Europe. And when the two come together, it gets more complex. So I'm not an art lawyer, so I won't speak to beyond my knowledge.
Okay, no worries. I think we hit on some good pieces there. I just have some things which I'm kind of curious about. So have you seen this guy big on social media, Colin Amalfi Jets? People call him up. They're like, I need a private jet.
Yeah,
I need to go here to here. He goes, all right, here's my options. Is this like, how is it being a private art dealer? Someone calls you up. They're like, I need a $10 million piece. It's got to be a Rembrandt. I need this. Like, how are these deals facilitated?
So there's so many different ways that it happens. So if nobody's ever called me up and said, I need a $10 million piece, and then I actually sold them a $10 million piece. That's super rare. If there's ever a $10 million transaction for me, I'm one of a chain of people. But being a private art dealer, sometimes somebody contacts me and they say, I want this specific piece, just like you said. Can you hunt this piece down? And I go through my network. Sometimes someone might just say, hey, I'm building a new home and I want something contemporary. I love red. It's going to go in my dining room and I want a big painting. Can you do that and also do something? And I just will show them more decorative options. It goes the same for lots of art dealers. Sometimes you're helping people sell their work. Sometimes you're giving them auction strategy advice. It's very bespoke because at the end of the day, it's basically ultra personalized luxury sales. It's basically what art dealing is.
What's the lowest price deal that you would be involved with?
5 figures.
Okay, got it. Not really worth that.
I'll occasionally go to 4 figures if it's an emerging artist and stuff. I also will sometimes do smaller deals just because I know it's helping the artist out, even if I'm not making as much money. But also, here's another thing: as oftentimes the super expensive works that sell for like millions of dollars, you actually don't make as much money as a work that might sell for like 50 or 60,000. Or you might make more, but the percentage is so much smaller because of different financial intermediaries, escrow. You have to have like contracts for stuff that big, and obviously legal, stuff eats into profit. And for a $50,000-$60,000 piece, the profit margin is a lot higher.
Interesting. Okay, that makes sense.
For me personally.
What's the most valuable piece of art you've ever held in your own hands?
Held in my own hands?
Yeah.
Well, usually paintings you don't hold in your hand.
Got to think.
I'm trying to think of the most valuable.
Because most of these deals, you're never touching the artwork.
Yeah. See, I've held like, $1 million works of art and stuff. The thing is though, not only am I not touching the artwork, you're not even supposed to, because let's say I'm over at a client's place, like liability wise, you're supposed to have the movers do it. I always feel bad. I like want to help them, especially if they're like dealing with a big piece, but like sometimes I'm not allowed to. But I've it's on. My grandparents used to deal a lot of glass art, so I've held a lot of glass like behind me, which is never broken anything. Knock on wood.
Knock on glass.
Yeah, knock on glass.
Okay, makes sense. And is it all pretty much commission structure in the art world when things are being sold?
Everything and anything and everything. So one thing I do is advising. That's sort of like a realtor helping you buy a home. That's where I take a commission, and a smaller commission, which will be single or low double digits. Then there is brokering, where, buy, hold, sell. That the commission is often, a typical dealer gets 40 to 50% commission, which I know sounds like
40 to 50%.
Yeah, I know. Everyone always raises their eyebrows when they hear that. I know it sounds like, oh my God, that's so much. That's so great. And on the surface it is. However, art sales are not regular. I can sell 2 massive pieces in a week and feel like king of the world and not sell anything meaningful for the next 2 months. Totally normal when you're a dealer. So, and the same with artists. So you kind of have to have an artificially large nest egg and to make up for lack of volume. And then the third way that that I'll sell art is buy, hold, and sell. And there the profit margins can be whatever. Like, for example, I bought some Takashi Murakami works from somebody who had some real estate issues and was in financial straits. So I got them. She needed money really fast, and I was able to get her the money basically next day. So I got them like a quarter of market value. So then if I wanted to, I could sell them tomorrow and probably double my money. But if I probably wait a little more, I could probably quadruple or whatever my money. So buy, hold, and sell is how you make the most, but it's also the highest risk and most capital intensive.
Okay, with everything that you've said in mind, do you think that the average person should be investing or owning art?
Yes. And obviously, I have a biased opinion, but first off, there's a really big difference between art making money and then just holding value and being able to sell it and just have wonderful beauty around you. And the other thing is, I think one of the largest return ROIs for art is the soft return on investment, because it is kind of the ultimate hobby of the elite. And it's a real way of bonding with people kind of that tend to be successful. And I have heard from many, many collectors, more than I can count, that some work of art that they had opened a door socially and paid for itself 10 times over. Kind of like you hear talk about people say that their country club pays for itself 10 times over. It's hard to quantify, but it's true.
I feel like I hear people talking about that with fancy watches.
Yes, exactly. I got memed for it on the show, but yes.
Do you think fancy? Hey man, you're telling them, you guys want to wear it? You want to check it out? I do remember that. That was funny. I think you're the only one that they focused in on a watch. within these
Yeah,
pieces.
yeah.
Um,
But
do you think that a fancy watch could be considered a piece of art? What can classify something as art?
I absolutely think a nice watch is art. I think the people that make it are some of the top craftspeople in the world, top artists in the world. Um,
Okay.
Absolutely. I think lots of stuff is art. Yeah.
Top
You have
three,
a, you,
top three dream watches. What do we got?
um, Jacob and Co. I know it's a ridiculous watch, but they're freaking awesome. Um, there's a there's a really rare 1980s Audemars Piguet that I'm obsessed
Mm,
with, and I'm not enough of a watch guy to know
the name.
the name. And then I love vintage, and then a super vintage Piguet.
Okay. Very nice. No Richard Millie's over there?
No, though, no hate on those.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a fan. I'm a fan. I
Yeah,
don't know, at some point I gotta get myself something in the watch market. I might have to talk to you. Do a little bit of
I'm more for the art market, but but I can always point you in the right direction. That's the funny thing, actually, is a lot of clients will like a lot of being an art dealer is clients will ask you for general wealth because like
yeah.
part of an art dealer is knowing wealthy people, so they'll ask you for, do you know a jewelry person? Do you know a good lawyer? Do you know this? That's like a big. Sometimes you're
Well,
half a
well,
person's therapist.
well, let's go down this route. What are your craziest stories from your job? Like what's some things that really stand out to you?
So I'll have to redact names for
Sure.
client confidentiality. Um, all right. Okay. I got two. I got one that involved me and one that involved my family when I was a child. So I sold a very large bronze sculpture to a top hip hop producer. Like he produces some really massive rap artists. And the sculpture was huge. It required a dedicated 18 wheeler to get it out there.
Oh,
And it was something that you could put inside or outside because it was resistant to the elements. It was fully cast bronze, but you probably would have wanted to put it inside if you could. But this producer, he wanted to put it outside. So I'm arranging transportation and all this stuff, and it arrives and he's not there. And so the transportation guy calls me. He's kind of freaking out. It comes a whole thing. I end up getting in touch with his daughter, and she's like, just leave it on the lawn. I'm like,
yeah.
okay. And this whole time I'm like, you want to, as I mentioned, you want to insure the work,
Right,
and
right.
there's certain maintenance that happens. I don't hear from them. I emailed them a few times to follow up. Don't hear from them. 2 years later, there was a giant hailstorm, destroys the sculpture. Client reaches back out to me and tells me, and I feel horrible. There's really nothing I can do in terms of like giving them their money back. And I
Right.
tell them that, and the hip hop producer goes, I've been shot before. Who gives a fuck? We Gucci. Hangs up the phone, and he's still a client. Ridiculous.
That is
So
ridiculous.
that was, yeah, ridiculous. Um,
Do you mind
it's
telling
just,
me how much was the statue? Did you say?
I can't tell you that one.
Okay.
The
All right.
second story I can tell you. I can tell you values. The second story was when my grandfather was running the business. This was in around 2007, so I was like 14, and I was like working in the business. Like I'd help him out and send emails from him and stuff. And he gets a cold email from someone claiming to be a Nigerian prince, like broken English, wants to buy like a very expensive artwork, 6 figures. And my grandpa goes to respond. He actually asked me to type the email, and I'm like, he's old, he's like 75 at the time. And I'm like, you're an idiot. Like, you're actually an idiot. This is not true. And he's like, just respond, whatever. Tell him to wire the money to this one bank account. There's no money in it. Nothing can happen. It's fine. So I obviously follow orders and I do it. Don't hear from it until about 2 or 3 months later. The person wires $350,000 into this account and gives an address for an actual like Nigerian compound. So to my knowledge, we're the only people that have sold art to a real Nigerian prince off of a cold email.
That is wild. Did you ever actually
Yeah.
end up talking to the person?
No, I never spoke with the prince, and neither did my grandfather. He wired the money. We sent the work out. He said thank you. That was it.
Interesting. Wild. Okay. That is pretty cool.
I'd love, trust me, I would love talking. I think about that like once a month.
I have not had the same success with Nigerian Princess. None of them have sent me any money. They've only asked me for it. Okay. Really fun. Yeah, please.
Oh, I was just going to say it's a blessing and a curse because I always remember that story because I get a bunch of scam emails, but then I always think, what if it's the one? So
I know.
I'll always follow them. Yeah.
You never know. You never know.
Yeah.
All right. Little rapid fire to wrap us up here. So for my audience, if they were, you're an average retail investor, you got some money, you put into stocks, you put in maybe a little bit into crypto, you're thinking to diversify into some art, give me 3 pieces of art or artists or pieces like that, hey, here's where I, as an art dealer, would say you're, early, middle, entry market. Go look at these pieces. These are probably going to be a solid investment that'll appreciate for you.
Oh, I'm really sorry. I don't want to give names. I don't want to give
genres. Do we have genres, areas?
Okay. I'll ask me the second question and I'll think of some value I can give for the first question.
Okay, no problem. I saw you doing a video where people were asking you this museum or that museum. So I was going to ask you, what are your top 3 museums or galas in the world that you would recommend everybody go to?
I'll recommend some that are off the beaten path a little bit because everyone hears about MoMA and Met. Art Institute of Chicago is absolutely incredible. It's got some of the best Van Goghs in the world. The Broad Museum in LA. And the last would be the Rubel collection in Miami as amazing contemporary art. And the Phillips collection in Washington, D.C. That's where I'm from.
Okay, very nice.
Back to the first question. In terms of someone wants to invest in art, I would recommend that they focus on contemporary living artists that they can follow on social media, because I personally believe that social media is going to produce the next wave of artists. So if you're looking to really invest that, or if you want to make one big splurge, you can try and buy like a Warhol or Murakami print, which will always maintain some value over time. I'll say Warhol or Murakami because they're big. That's not any secret.
Yeah. Not dropping anything too crazy. Okay, no worries. Yeah, I actually saw a bunch of Warhols when I was at Art Basel. There was some billionaire running an event where he had a bunch of them put out, which was cool. Cool to see them. There's Picasso there. What's your thoughts on Picasso? Where does he rank for you?
He's great. I mean, he's a legend for a reason. One of the eternal debates is Picasso versus Matisse, and my hot take is I actually like Matisse more, but Picasso's still amazing.
Yeah, pretty goated for sure. Okay, any other things that we haven't covered on here in terms of your job, art, investing, anything else we touch on? That's actually, hold that thought. Think about that one for 1 second. One other question. What are your thoughts on NFTs?
Oh my gosh, what a loaded question. It's funny because the context around the question has changed because everyone was asking me when they were like going through the roof.
Yeah.
I always kind of just kept a very neutral attitude. I think here's what I'll say about NFTs. NFTs kind of had all of the mechanics of what makes art valuable, but not the underlying essence, kind of, because there wasn't, at the end of the day, I'm talking about all these like cold financial ways that art is valued, but ultimately people love art. Like if people didn't love art, then it wouldn't sell. And people never really loved NFTs, I think. But you know what? If you can make money with it or someone's finding a way to, great. But whoever bought those Bored Ape Yacht Clubs are really not doing so hot.
Yeah, not doing so hot. A little down in the dumps. All right, back to my last question. Anything else that we'd want to touch on? Anything that I didn't hit on that you think would be interesting for the audience?
I can't think of much. I guess if I was to leave the audience with anything, maybe you're left with more questions or confusion than answers at the end of this. And all I can say to that is, at the end of the day, if art made sense on paper, there wouldn't be an opportunity and I wouldn't have a job. So
there you go.
you know, that's just the way it works.
You're kind of blowing up a little bit on Insta as well. People should check out your socials. I saw you doing the video that went kind of viral the other day, asking people man on the street style content. You doing some more of that?
Yeah, I'm doing a little man on the street content, and I'm actually working on something that I'm really excited about, and maybe I'll come back on a later date when I can talk about it. But I'm gonna do something that's actually really in line with what we're talking about, trying to really build the careers of some artists and actually trying to have some predictive value over careers in actually a more quantitative sense. And so hopefully something will come out in the next few months. But yeah, man, I'm always having fun on social media, and I'm always yapping. Actually, a Bob Ross just set a record literally earlier today. Sold for $620,000, $787,900 if you include the buyer's premium. Bob Ross market's exploding. Actually, that's what I would buy. If you're willing to spend money, I would buy a Bob Ross.
Interesting.
That's what I would. Yeah, look for Bob Ross. If you take away one thing,
Bob Ross. How do you make sure you don't get scammed? How do you make sure you don't get scammed? Like, it's pretty easy to verify that it's real.
The estate will actually verify the Bob Ross for you if you send it in there.
Very cool. What watch do we have on today? I just saw that one pop into frame.
This is the one that I got memed on for the show. I figured I had to do it. That's the
nice.
One that got me here.
I know we're just gonna do 3 more minutes here. Actually, we talked plenty of art, but I want to actually hear, so people might recognize you. I mentioned at the beginning, you were on a TV show, national TV, Love is Blind on Netflix. Got any thoughts on that experience? I feel like people see people go on there and then they're like, man, they've been on TV. It's like a different person, but you're just here talking art with me,
Yeah. It's funny, actually, that they announced the new season today. Honestly, I think life is pretty much the same, but just with a couple more selfies in the street once in a while. It still feels surreal. It honestly feels like a past life. I mean, it's been almost 2 years now. So, yeah.
When it first came out, were there a lot of people stopping you?
Yeah, that's when it was the craziest. So it's kind of funny because when the show first came out, people would be I would be walking down the street and people would be like, oh my God, you're Leo from Love is Blind. Now I get recognized less occasionally, but it's more like I'm vaguely familiar to people. So some people will be like, were you on TV? And some people will be like, were you at the Kansas City real estate convention last weekend? They just know that I'm somehow vaguely. So that's really what I am. I'm forever vaguely familiar to a small subset of the population.
Vaguely familiar. That's all we can strive to be in this world.
Vaguely familiar.
Very cool. This was awesome having you on. I enjoyed the time. People should go check out your socials. Do you want to just shout those out real quick?
Sure. It's Leo _ my last name, Braudy on all platforms.
Perfect. Go check it out. The Instagram. It's very interesting. Some more content will be coming. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I learned a lot about the art world. To be honest, I would not have been comfortable investing in art prior to this, but I actually do feel a lot more comfortable and a lot more insights. And of course, if people are trying to buy art and you need a dealer, you know where to find them.
You know where to find me.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Thank you to the audience for tuning in on this Tuesday evening on Wolf Financial Live. This video will also be available on YouTube. Appreciate everyone for watching. Take care, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you, Gav. Later, guys.